What's a little
doable.
miserable?
The fucking. Why are you being a fucking cocksucker? What the fuck is that?
What the fuck is what?
Shit. That I don't like that gain. I want it to be more. More. Give me more. More.
You fucking cocksucker! I said at my gain! At my gain!
Yeah,
Now relax.
Look at you.
Just have fun. Just
yeah,
have fun.
I done goofed. All right, there we go. All right, I'm going to delete all this shit before this.
Just
all right,
have
we're
fun.
good.
Good job.
It won't fucking work.
There are no two words more harmful in the English language than good job. Do you agree or do you disagree?
I mean, it's objectively wrong, but, like, I get the point he's making.
Do you think that Terrence Fletcher has a point overall?
No.
Do you really? Okay, explain.
Okay, can we turn on a fucking light, dude? It feels like a goddamn interrogation in here.
It's just because it's on your face.
Feels like an FBI interrogation going on.
The overheads if it makes
up
you feel
in here.
any better.
Yeah, that now it feels like a goddamn podcast. Also, the vitamin. Well, no, the vitamin D might be good. It might give us energy.
No, dude. The only thing that's going to give us energy is our will to overcome our tiredness.
Yeah. No, I mean Fletcher. Dude, the whole thing's a fucking metaphor. Fletcher's not even a real person. Because a real person, I don't care what kind of like prestigious, whatever the fuck you work at.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just do that.
Yeah. So I was going to say, so my uncle works at Berklee School of Music in Boston.
Yeah.
He's like a dean or whatever. And apparently Whiplash is like a meme amongst the faculty because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is like not a surprise at all. But my mom told me that and I was like, I don't want to live in the real world anymore. Like, it's so disappointing just knowing that like a Fletcher couldn't exist.
It is disappointing to know that Fletcher couldn't exist. I mean, it's a good thing, but it's also like sad.
Yeah.
Because the meme of it is pretty iconic. But I don't think Fletcher's meant to represent a real person. I think Fletcher's just meant to represent the fucking side of Neiman that is like the one that's ruining his life.
Now, and it's kind of left up to the audience, like whether or not it is ruining his life, right? Because like his relationship.
If your takeaway from that movie is anything other than his life is absolutely ruined and the kid is an emotional wreck, then I don't know what to say.
Well, you're going to have to say something because that's my takeaway, quite frankly. Do you want to know my actual takeaway from the movie? My actual takeaway was like, dear God, I wish I had a Fletcher in my life. Because I feel like, and this might be pure naivety or like pure narcissism, which I am a narcissist, but like pure narcissism insofar as like I feel like I have unexecuted on potential. I had one.
But so does everyone.
I know.
So you're no longer special.
Well, I know I'm not special, but like.
So then what would make you special? The fact that you happen to be born into a circumstance where the meanest possible human just so happened to use his meanness in order to maximize your potential?
Yeah.
That's what would make you happy?
No, that's not what would make me. I'll give you an example, right?
Okay.
The Fletcheriest professor I ever had in college made me like what I am today, right? Which was Moladina.
Yeah.
And like that whole experience was like Econ 101. This sounds so stupid, but Econ 101 with him was a make you or break you proposition, and you took that class, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is that like you either make it or you don't?
But what was the meanest word that came out of his mouth towards you or towards anyone that you've heard?
Probably just like something like to the effect of like, yeah, Alex, quite blank, this is not good enough. Like if you've ever had
but you want to compare that with
like you
Fletcher from the movie?
Cocksucker.
No, but it's not just the language. It's the emotional abuse of hyping someone up who's
like the emotional whiplash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the whole fucking point.
Right.
And he will just genuinely tear you the fuck down. There's a difference between keeping it real or whatever you want want to say, and whatever the fuck Fletcher's doing. Because what Fletcher's doing is
Well, what Fletcher's
full-blown
doing would have
harassment.
gotten him fired in like 2 seconds in any like real actual place,
Yeah.
right?
What I didn't like, one of the few criticisms I had of the movie, I didn't like the fact that we kind of got it out of Fletcher, that sort of his motivation for this whole persona was just sort of, it's sort of like we all knew it, but I wish it had rather gone unsaid, that just that like he never got the award he wanted as a musician, and so he's like living it out through these people. Like, I wish it just hadn't been like bluntly said. I wish it had just been a thing. It's like that parent at a 5th grade hockey game who's like just absolutely ballistic at the refs and yelling at his own kid and shit. It's like, we all know it's because, like, dude, you fucking thought you were gonna be the next big thing.
It's almost like
so you're living through your kid.
By making Fletcher more of a person and less of a force of nature or a force of Neiman's subconscious, it actually weakens the movie in some respect. It makes it a better movie from a, I don't know about a better movie. It makes it a more understandable movie from a traditional perspective, so the audience can say like, oh, like this is why he's doing this. But like
that movie said fuck it to the traditional,
because it's all a metaphor. It's meant to piss you off. What
I think I think the brilliance of it is the very fact that it's willing to acknowledge that we can always push more and get more out of people than what we're currently getting them out of them.
Mm-hmm.
But at what point do we need to societally say, hold on a minute,
this
like,
is too far.
Have we at what point are we hurting people more than we're helping them? Because you can always be pushed hard. I mean, look at any crazy story about some, like, I don't know, a veteran in the military or whatever who was captured by whoever and went through years of like torture and shit and made it out. Like, we can always be pushed more. Like, I wouldn't die if I was forced to go a year with only 3 hours of sleep a day. I would live, but like, if someone had a gun to my head the whole time, I could be doing work 20 hours a day for however long until my body physically breaks down. But it's like, is that really...
Do you ever wish that you had someone to help you discover those limits, to really know who you are?
Well, I've got myself.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And I can, part of growing up, part of becoming the person who you want to be, to get all fucking big and like, this is the type of quote that would come from a podcast which has a very, like, I don't even know what you were recommending the other week, where it's like, we're like a self-help podcast.
Yeah.
Like, listen here, folks. Shit, I forgot where I was going with it. But no, just, I think that part of like growing into a good person is learning how to be honest with yourself about how much pushing you need to, because it can all come from within ourselves. We can do, I mean, you watch a fucking Jocko Willink, whatever, motivational clip on YouTube or whatever, like, it's not impossible to say that all the motivation we need can come from within. So then at what point, what we're saying is that we know we don't trust ourselves to have the commitment that this part of us wants, so we need some external force to make it happen. But then at that point, we don't actually want it anymore. We like the idea of it. Yeah, it's the same way I like the idea of doing steroids to deal with a, insecurity in me, and like the person, the kid in me who wants to get totally fucking yoked 365. Like, yeah. I mean, it's not a great analogy. It's different, but I don't know. I think it gets the point across. But the movie, it does run into it. It brings up an interesting moral dilemma, which is that obviously if it was just like a standard movie, the way it would have ended would be Neiman being like, no, I know my own self-worth, and like storming off and like, getting whatever, giving whatever testimony needed to be given in order to get Fletcher sacked or, not allowed to be around kids anymore or whatever. But by having the ending of the movie basically being like Fletcher pushing him to the point where he's ruined basically every relationship he has. But it gets the performance out of him at the end of the movie that will cement him as an all-time great drummer that people will remember for as long as there is music. And that creates a really interesting... That's an ending that's much more interesting to talk about than had it... Because I don't think that movie would have... It didn't have the budget, and the movie was only going to succeed by doing something fucking crazy. And just committing to it. Yeah. And it went fucking crazy. But it does bring up an interesting moral dilemma that I saw a lot of people on Reddit getting into, and I wanted to tell them all they're fucking idiots because they are, but about like exactly kind of what you were saying, where it's like, is the takeaway from this movie that actually Fletcher is a good thing in his life?
No,
like,
Fletcher is not a good I want to be
it's not that
clear
he's a
about
good
that.
person.
He's not a good person.
But does he have a net positive effect on Neiman?
He doesn't have a net positive effect on Neiman. The question is, does he have a net positive effect on jazz music as a whole? Because in order to create great art, it seems like sometimes great sacrifice is required. Because Fletcher's goal was not to not to create the conditions for Neiman to self-actualize him or like become the greatest version of Neiman that Neiman could possibly be. It was to turn Neiman through a crucible of punishment into the greatest jazz musician he could be.
Yeah. And that it gets into a moral territory where no one wants to do it, but we need to take a step back and ask ourselves what the only appropriate response is to take a step back, as is the case with so many things where we're like, ugh, the product is so good. Let's just try and not think about what's going on behind the scenes in order to get it to what it is. Like it, you know, it's like there's so many societal things where that comes up.
Yeah.
And it never, if your justification for, you know, if you're someone who's so lost in this way of thought that you think that jazz music as an entity is a more important thing on a moral level, on an ethical level, improving jazz holds more moral weight than the well-being of a human being, then then we're lost.
Yeah. I think that's the real philosophical argument. And I think really it's like Chris, the producer, Chris, the best EDM producer that he could possibly be, is not the same as Chris, the best person he could possibly be, in your case specifically.
Yeah. And I think that there's a strong, from a practical side of things as well, right? Like, I could work on music every waking second of my life that I have, where I'm not, like, you know, I have to spend a certain amount of time going and buying food and, like, going to and from work and, like, whatever. But if I dropped, if every other second of my life was spent doing music, I could create more content. Could it even possibly be the case that I could create something which would be listened to for generations that I wouldn't? Like, sure, all those things are possible, but it also is very possible that I create something like that.
Anyway.
Stemming from a love for music and doing it when I feel like doing it. But more importantly than that is like it being able to take a step back and say, I'd rather create 10 original songs over my lifetime that I'm happy about and enjoyed making them than 100 which were just a result of a pure robotic process because I never give my ears a single second of rest. Because then I wouldn't enjoy a single one of them.
Right.
If I don't, fuck any belief system that's like I'm not allowed to enjoy anything that I create. Like fuck that. So I'm not willing to go there, and I don't think people should. I mean, we could. It's the same like meme of like force professional athletes on gear. It's like I would improve the quality of the product, but like is that really where we want to go?
Yeah. It really is kind of like because I am very much of the opinion that like human relationships are like the most important thing, maybe the only thing.
The only thing. They are the
matters.
only thing. They are the only thing. And I actually believe that.
Yeah. And I think that from some perspective is like I've sacrificed a lot for human relationships because I could be a much more effective whatever if I wasn't, tied down by that. But in my mind it's worth it, and I guess what Whiplash made me question was like, is that actually worth it? Like for me in my mind it's like, it's like an econ PhD or something. It's like that's the end game. That's what I should be grinding towards, and every second not spent grinding towards that is like, am I actually wasting my time? Am I, disappointing like the universe or whatever by not trying to become the best economist I could be, which sounds so fucking stupid, but like, yeah. You get what I'm saying.
I don't know. I think, but everyone struggles with that, right? And then, shit, I forgot what I was going to say. But the other thing to remember, and we don't want to remember it because it's a slap in the face, but it's that if you got to the point where you got a PhD in any subject, let's just say econ, a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever, and the only reason you're at that point was this fear of not being someone who will be like this, basically just driven by a fear of not being remembered or not living up to your full potential, then at no moment along that journey will you A, enjoy yourself, but B, more importantly, when you get there, you still there's an underlying problem which hasn't been solved, and you're putting you're putting Band-Aids on a wound instead of healing the fucking wound or whatever. Because you'll get your PhD, and then it's not like it'll magically go away, and you'll be like, oh yeah, no, I'm good enough now. Time to go relax. I'm good enough. Look, I've got a piece of paper that says I have a PhD. And then it's like,
chill.
then it's like, well, okay, your brain's going to go to, well, how many people have PhDs and how many of them are remembered? How many people have PhDs who've said important things that will be quoted in classrooms for generations to come? How many people without PhDs have done that, have quotes like that they'll be remembered for? And I have a fucking PhD and I won't be remembered. It'll never stop. And even to the point where you drive yourself so insane that you actually do reach a point where people will always remember you. And you by that point, you're so goddamn lost that there's no ability to have any notion of like, I don't know, viewing things from I don't even want to use the word rational, but just like, I don't know. You can't remove yourself from the situation.
Pseudo-objective point of view, but on some level, I don't know if you feel like this, part of me wants to do that. Part of me wants to self-destruct and push myself as far as I can. And I don't give a fuck if I put a gun in my mouth at like 27. Like, it doesn't matter to me. I just want to find out how far I can go.
Yeah, because this is like, but what this comes down to, right, is this problem where we are willing to put ourselves through physical hell if it means doing whatever we can to remove ourselves from feeling anything on an emotional level.
Do you think that's what's going on here?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks for leveling with me.
Yes, I think that's what's going on. But it's not just with you. It's with me, and it's with everyone.
I don't know if it's with everyone, but I think there is a decided subset of the population.
There's a certain group of people that just like, we know that putting in the fucking work sucks balls. And so it's like, there's some pretty motherfucking badasses out there who just like, shave their heads and have 25-inch arms. Like, that looks pretty fucking cool. I could be that.
Isn't that kind of what
if I just pushed myself harder, I could fucking do it.
To become the bald-headed badass. Like, isn't that what? Just like,
dude, J.K. Simmons in that movie came out 2014, something like that. He's like what, late 50s now, 60s?
He's in his 70s. Yeah, I think
60s.
Late 60s, early 70s.
So he certainly was over 50 when they filmed that movie, right?
He was probably over 60, but yeah, for sure over 50.
He's fucking ripped.
He looked good, dude.
He looked fucking good.
I gotta say, I was paying attention, and because I worked where I did for so long, I was like, in terms of actual strength, like this guy's got jack shit going on. But in terms of just like leanness and arms, like the dude was on point. He looked scary.
He looked absolutely. He would have been significantly less scary had he looked like a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
There was a level of like, this is a motherfucker who will just win any fight you put him in.
But it wasn't a physical. It was like he will win any emotional fight.
Well, yeah, no, he's the kind of guy who's like, he's got the required strength, but he recognizes that he's better off spending just as much time prepping on like a mental side of things.
Yeah.
Like he'll always outsmart you, and he's strong enough to get where he needs to get.
Yeah.
Shit's fucking scary.
He
is
like,
horrifying.
He just had like a combination of like the killer instinct and like the just the physicality to project it. By the way, I spent all of college chasing that combination. I don't know if I ever got there.
Dude, I don't know if anyone's ever gotten there. I mean, I feel like I'm not crazy for saying like that performance is what it should be up there as far as one of the all-time.
It's one of the best ever.
It really
It really
is. It's remarkable what he was able to commit
It's
to.
up there with like I don't even know who to compare it to, like Brando in Streetcar, I guess.
I feel like the one that gets referenced is like, oh my god, the performance that made the movie is Heath Ledger as the Joker. Like that's the one that gets referenced as like the fucking performance of the generation. But honestly, dude, it's to think about.
It really is, though. It
literally
really
being
is.
able to, on the flip of a switch, go from laughing and smiling and joking around with your co-cast to that. Right? That's insane to me.
Yeah.
And those people, I feel like his performance was so goddamn good that I wouldn't have had to put in that much effort to like just looking terrified. If someone did that to me and I knew it was for acting, I still would be borderline on tears.
I gotta wonder what Miles Teller was thinking throughout the filming of that.
Dude, that shit must have fucked him up.
Because it seems like, because we both, like anyone who's pledged any kind of Greek life has known. But the thing, and I was thinking about this, the thing about J.K. Simmons in that movie was the whiplash of like, and this is what, you know, our pledging people fucked up, is the going back and forth between like, hey man, like it's okay, like just have fun, and like you fucking cocksucker, like the going back and forth between that is kind of what makes that so compelling.
Dude, the fucking the hype speech before Neiman gets his first like performance in the whatever the top band practice is, to not just stopping there, but going far enough as to give a fake like, oh damn, okay, he's kind of like pretending to be like, oh shit, he's kind of killing it this practice, to then hop into to give him the slight emotional cue that he passed.
Yeah.
And then to go full blown into the throwing a chair at him and continuously telling him it's not his fucking tempo. The brilliance of like, and just the emotional manipulation of like that one kid in the beginning, like, you know, were you early or were you late? Or no, with the kid in the beginning, it was like, are you out of tune or are you in tune?
Yeah.
And the emotional twist to fucking say either you are fucking with my band practice and wasting my time, or even worse than that, you are in a music school and don't know how to tune your instrument. It is like, for someone who is literally in tune and is doing it right, to somehow, I mean, it's like, how the fuck? That's incredible manipulation, because that kid on any rational level is like, no, I'm just like in tune playing the piece of fucking music that's in front of me. Like he's doing it exactly right. And to be able to make the kid just start crying and kick him the fuck out. And also the other incredible scene, which I wish we'd had something more like this in our pledging, was when he's ripping into the band and the assistant walks in. He's like, why the fuck is this fucking, I don't even know what he calls him, like short motherfucker standing here? Get the fuck out of my sight. And he turns around and the guy's not out of his sight enough and yells at him again. It's incredible.
I can still see you, Mini-Me!
Yeah, that. That's one of the funniest lines.
I genuinely think I could have been the most horrifying Hellmaster in all of our fraternity's history.
I think if you and me and it wouldn't have worked because we would have all been seniors. But if you, me, and the Noah had done it, I think, and had we bought in,
yeah,
I think we could have fucked some people
The thing
up.
is that I genuinely think, and this is not me tooting my own horn, I genuinely think I'm unhinged enough and you are unhinged enough to make it work. And so is the Noah, as the audience will.
The Noah's almost sort of the least unhinged.
Who do you think is the most unhinged of the three of us?
You, by a mile.
Okay.
And then me, and then the Noah. Which is weird because Noah is objectively the most...
Because that's the complete... I don't want to get too deep here, but that is the complete inverse of, like, our upbringing stability.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean,
the Noah should be the most unhinged,
Yeah.
but he's the most, like, ambiguous of the three.
I've never seen Noah be totally unhinged.
Dude, Noah sent me... I gotta show you this message he sent me when he got high one time.
Okay. All right. We'll save that for after the podcast.
Yeah.
I will say is that during our pledging, I went in the bathroom and I was so upset, I punched a bathroom door until my knuckles bled, and then I punched a mirror off the wall.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's not cool, but, like, it's the level of, you know, I don't know, dude. I don't know where I was going.
It's pretty fucking unhinged. Noah will push himself more than I'll push myself on certain things. But he's not unhinged.
Yeah, no, Noah's fairly hinged, I gotta say.
Yeah. I think the two of us are too self-aware.
Yeah. But, like, have you ever seen the self-awareness, like, drop through the floor and it goes away and then you truly see how far you can go?
No? What?
All right,
that I didn't follow.
We'll move on.
We'll
move on. Yeah, dude. So Whiplash, as a movie, I don't think I have been that affected by a piece of art, maybe ever.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I recommended it to you. I do think that we would have been better off as a fraternity had we made our Hellmasters watch that movie right before pledging starts. I think we should have watched that.
I completely agree.
That I unironically think would have made our whole process much better.
Also, we should have picked better Hellmasters, except for Noah. He was great.
Mine, dude.
No, Noah actually...
Him falling kind of ruined him.
Kind of a weak point.
Back-to-back years.
Anyway, this is personal shit.
Yeah. We're getting into personal shit.
We'll talk about this later.
I mean, he had the fucking balls to run, and I didn't, even though I wanted to. So
you should have.
Here I am shitting on him, and I didn't have the balls to run. So yeah,
and
full blown hands up.
I feel like this is like Inception, where at the beginning scene it's Cobb and Sato or whatever, and he's like, let's not be old men full of regret anymore. And I feel like we're just old men full of regret.
Full of
doing
fucking
the
regret.
podcast. Yeah.
Dude, is the beginning of that movie, is the Sato he's talking to the one who got lost?
Yes. Yeah.
So that doesn't make any sense to me.
So that's that I think takes place about, and I don't remember Inception super well, about 2/3 of the way through the movie is when that scene
No.
No?
No. The scene with the whatever old man, that's the first scene in the fucking movie.
No, but chronologically it takes place about 2/3 of the way through, or maybe more. Maybe towards the end of the movie.
That's where I'm confused, because that's where I think it is. I think that's where it does take place. I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always struggled with trying to figure out, because remember the start of the movie, basically, there's an old ass Sato.
Yes, old Sato.
That's the very beginning of the movie, on the beach wherever they are. And fucking Cobb and what the hell's his name? What's Gordon Levitt's character's name?
I think it's Arthur.
Yeah, you're right. Cobb and Arthur are whatever on their mission trying to get Sato's whatever's locked away in his brain, right? And essentially Sato's testing them, right? Because then
oh no, you're right.
Because we see old Sato and then we see
young
So
Sato.
I think one of the brilliant things that Christopher Nolan does, but that has always fucked with me in my head is like, am I picking up on this correctly or am I not? I think the movie starts in the same location at 2 different periods in time.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're
I
right.
think the very beginning of the movie is that location, but actually chronologically is the end of the movie.
Yes.
And
No,
then it
yeah.
flips to the beginning of the movie, but in the same location.
Yeah, no,
I think that that's what happens.
You're absolutely
but-
correct. Yes.
But it's hard to pick up on that.
Yes.
So that is one of those like
It's
Christopher
such a-
Nolan, like, oh, you fucker.
This is why like on one hand, like Reddit overrates the fuck out of Christopher Nolan. On the other hand,
Like, that's so goddamn cool.
huge respect for a director who is willing to leave 95% of the audience in the complete dust in the first, like,
Because the amount of dude, this was one of the first moments in my life I had a where hands raised high, or like I'm hand raised high up
Yeah.
here. So many motherfuckers are hand raised low down here. It's like the number of people being like, bro, but like when they're in like the third dream, like, man, like I can't even, like, are they dreaming within it? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's a dream inside of a dream inside of a dream. Like, sure, it could never happen, I guess.
but it's not that
But
complicated.
like, stop
It's
making
not
this
that
out
deep,
to be like
dude.
that fucking deep. It's not that goddamn hard to conceptualize. It's the other shit that's a little bit more
Yeah.
interesting in that
Yeah,
movie.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
that movie, as far as Nolan just like masterclass in like deceiving plot, isn't even one of his best.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not. It's not that deceptive
it's
at all,
fun as
really.
hell.
Yeah.
That like
I have this theory that Nolan has always just wanted to make a Bond movie, and he's just never got the ability. Have you seen Tenet yet?
I still haven't.
You
I'm
got-
nervous.
You have to watch
Because there's this video that keeps popping up on my YouTube recommended, and it makes me terrified to watch the movie. And the title of the video is like, "Why can't you hear the dialogue in Tenet?"
Yeah.
And
this is the one thing
That fucks with. I'm like, oh my, this is gonna be too much of a mind fuck.
I no. There's no mind fuck. It's just a poorly mixed movie. Like, and I know you're an audio guy. Watch it with subtitles. Watch it on the best headphones you possibly can. That's all.
Doesn't
can
he just
do.
keep saying the same word though?
No.
Doesn't he
it's-
just keep saying Tenet or something?
No, just it's a movie you just have to watch.
But
with
isn't it
subtitles.
basically Memento but sci-fi?
Kind
It's
of
like
but-
starts at like the end and the beginning,
Well-
and then merges in on one point.
And this is a pseudo spoiler. Is that the whole conceit of the movie? Are you familiar with the pincer movement in military terminology?
I'm assuming it has something to do with like narrowing in on one position. or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. So you just have one
Yeah.
position, and then you have one movement of troops move in
But
from the
it's
left.
it's
and
one
from the
instead of
right,
left and right, it's future and,
and
past.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what Tenet is about, and the pincer movement takes place around the beginning of the movie. That's it.
So the beginning of the movie is sort of like the climax.
Yes. Explicitly, the beginning of the movie is the climax of the movie.
So do you think that the movie has a hidden level of brilliance to it, and the reason it got bad reviews is because Chris Nolan finally went too far and like past the point where normies could keep up, or is it genuinely just too much of a like, look at me go, I'm Christopher Nolan?
It's kind of both, because the audio mixing is genuinely dog shit, and like I don't know what he was going for there, but like your audience not being able to understand the dialogue in a movie is never an asset, because the plot is complicated, and honestly probably most people, myself included, will need like a notepad to like draw it out to really understand what's going on.
That's interesting. I do want to watch it and compare in my, because have you seen Memento?
No, I have not.
So that's so fascinating that we've come at this from two different.
Almost
'Cause
like we've done a temporal pincer movement.
Yeah.
On Christopher Nolan.
Because Memento is not even. I respect it as like an idea of a thing that got Nolan on the map, where they started to give him money to like produce actual fucking movies. But on its own, like people being like, "This is an all-time great," it's fine. It's not. There's better. But yeah, no, I would be interested to see which one I think the plot is more confusing. Because Memento, once you reach the end, you realize how obvious it was.
Right.
In that, What do you think the chances are you see the movie in the next 3 months?
Of Memento?
Yeah.
Extremely high.
Oh, extremely high. Okay, then I won't say.
Extremely high.
Then I won't say what I'm about to say.
Okay.
Because it would be a detail that like
No,
maybe
don't-
2 to
don't-
3
don't- don't
months
give me
in
a
you would
detail.
100%
Yeah,
forget. But now, but like if there's a chance you'll actually see it, then I won't say it.
No, I will absolutely see it. Yeah.
I do think that would be, and I should see Tenet and just compare the two. Be like,
So you watch Tenet, I watch Memento. No, the next podcast, because I just realized by the time the next podcast comes out, the Batman will have released.
dude,
I am so excited.
I am so attracted to Zoe Kravitz. It is absurd. I think she's like the most fucking
Dude,
gorgeous woman.
She is so hot.
She's so goddamn hot,
She's
dude.
so hot.
And Robert Pattinson is such a. What makes him so awesome is that he's such a goddamn sad loser, and he doesn't even try and pretend that he's
No,
not.
that's the awesome part,
Like-
dude. Yeah.
He aggressively tries to tell the world that's who he is.
Yes. In almost every single interview, he's like, guys, I can't believe I made it this far. Like, this movie sucks ass, but like, like him in the Twilight stuff.
Yeah, dude, he fucking hates those movies.
Yeah. I hope to God the Batman is good. I don't think it will. In some ways, it might surpass The Dark Knight. I gotta be honest with you. No, no.
Surpass the fucking Dark Knight.
In terms of the portrayal as Batman as a character, The Dark Knight is kind of meh.
But I don't. But is the Dark Knight meant to be a purely good character? Because I don't think so.
No,
I think Chris Nolan very intentionally
I don't
started to get at
but
the class issues
but
and make them more obvious.
I agree with you, but in terms of like exploring Batman as a character, exploring Batman specifically as a character, The Dark Knight does better than maybe any other Batman movie up to that point, but like it does just okay as a movie in my perspective. And the reason I say that is because of the expectations I have for the Batman and how high they are and how, I could be like, I am totally willing to walk out of the Batman and say like, yeah, The Dark Knight is the best Batman movie ever made. Batman movie, not movie with Batman in it ever made, because I think the best movie with Batman in it ever made probably will continue to be The Dark Knight.
It will be The Dark Knight and probably always will be.
Probably always will be.
Yeah.
But The Dark Knight is not really a Batman movie. The Dark Knight is a somewhat, I don't want to call it a political thriller, but like a thriller movie that happens to have Batman in it.
I see what you're saying.
Because it's not an exploration. Well, it is an exploration of Batman's character, but there's aspects to the Bruce Wayne Batman character that I feel like are not explored there as thoroughly as they could be. It's not a movie about Batman. It's a movie.
I think it's. Yeah, no, it's a movie about. Yeah, it's like a political / corruption thriller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a thriller.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's.
that happens to have Batman and the Joker in it.
I would say it's stronger than happens to, but yes,
Yeah,
I get your point.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It is a thriller movie that uses Batman and the Joker to explore its themes.
Yeah, Batman sort of is a representative character of a certain like people in positions of power and what it actually looks like to strategically push back against a broken system when they come at it from a good place and all the problems that come from that.
Yes.
And then the Joker being sort of like the classic representation of like the system gone wrong, and like it can only lead to like people who are just like insane and like seek anarchy because of how fucking rigid the system is. So yeah, I think that they're
it's almost
Bruce, as far as just a movie exploring the character Bruce Wayne, I'll give you that. There certainly is, hopefully, still better to come.
Yeah.
In that realm, and what I would love is just for everyone to take a fucking step back and say, all right, let's fuck off with just trying to make. Let's just fuck off with trying to just like one up the superhero movie that came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, let's settle down and make a goddamn fucking, let's find some like 13-year-old kid who's going to be Bruce Wayne for the next like 50 years or some shit, and like go through a real goddamn evolution of that character. And that would be awesome.
I think, and you know, Pattinson's not 13. I mean, he's in his mid-30s at this point. But I think it would be amazing if he were
could be.
actually Batman for like the next 50 years.
He very well could be.
If he does for Batman what, frankly, like what Robert Downey Jr. did for Iron Man, and I think he could. Because
would be, because I mean, the interesting thing about the Christopher Nolan films, they're known as the Christopher Nolan films. They're not known as the Christian Bale films.
That's the thing. I really like Bale's performance. I think he does a great job with the material that's given to him. But in my mind, that is Christopher Nolan's vision of Batman. That is not like the definitive film adaptation of Batman to me. And Christian Bale does a great job. Don't get me wrong. But like, there are aspects of the character that he misses. For example, I think Christian Bale, he almost portrays, and I've always been pretty into Batman, like since I was a kid, but he portrays like a version of the character that's actually so competent, he basically solves Gotham's problems at some point after The Dark Knight and is able to retire. Like, we have a Batman who is so good at his job that he cleans up Gotham in like 5 years between Batman Begins and the end of The Dark Knight, and then he's done. And to me, a critical part of Batman's character is this continuing war on crime that's perpetuated by the fact that Batman is mentally ill and he's a fucked up dude, and he is causing the problem as much as he is solving it. And that's kind of the point of The Dark Knight, right? Is that like Batman is causing this problem, but like Bruce Wayne is a genuinely mentally ill, like fucked up individual. And
I think you could there's a strong argument to be made in The Dark Knight that version of Bruce Wayne is mentally fucked. He's not okay in the head at all.
No.
But the portrayal of him is that he's so epic. But
he's almost like he's so competent, like he's so good at being Batman, like he's so good at his job
that he doesn't have to really deal with the question of like how much of this is on me.
Yeah,
because he can fix it so well.
Yeah,
I understand that. And on a one-on-one level, him and the Joker are no match for each other. He's better than the Joker in every way.
On every point.
It's just that he tries to play by some moral rules, whereas the Joker doesn't. That's the only difference.
What I'm hoping to see with the Batman movie that's going to be, released this week is a version of Batman who is absolutely brutal and because I always felt like Bale's Batman was holding back in his scenes of combat. And even in that one trailer scene where like Pattinson just like beats the fuck
shit
out of
and
a
Zoe
guy,
Kravitz is
it's like this guy is unhinged. He's not holding back, and he's going to do everything that he can, and he might still lose.
Yeah, I would Pattinson would kill an unhinged Batman who was addicted to the unhinged and just can't stop.
Did you see the clip from the movie that came out this past week? Where like Commissioner Gordon and there's Commissioner Gordon, like Bruce Wayne is like at a funeral function, and Commissioner Gordon
this posted on like
YouTube
popular YouTube channels and stuff? Yeah, then yes, I saw it.
Yeah, where there's like the guy who's like, "Hey, Mr. Wayne."
Yeah,
and like Bruce just kind of like looks down at the ground, is like, "This guy's fucked up. Like he's not okay."
Yeah.
And that really compels me to that character.
Yeah, there is an aspect of Bruce that is such a remarkably fascinating character. And yeah, so there could be, and that's where have you watched Gotham?
No.
I think you would enjoy Gotham.
It looks kind of campy, I won't lie to you.
What do you mean by campy?
It just looks a little like cheesy in some ways.
In some ways, yes.
quality.
Particularly the portrayal of Commissioner Gordon is about as like rah-rah police propaganda as it gets. So that part of it is a turnoff. But there is an intriguing aspect of the film, which is that the villains are significantly more competent than Bruce Wayne. Or I think I said film, show. And that's just in part that's because Bruce is a kid.
Yeah.
And he's not really the main. Commissioner Gordon's the main character. But it's interesting.
What is that actor's name? He's Bernard in Westworld. He's Felix Leiter in Bond.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to be able to remember his name.
He's the new Commissioner Gordon.
He's Gordon, which I'm significantly more cool with than fucking Andy. What's his name?
Andy Serkis.
Is that right? The guy who does Gollum.
Yeah.
Being fucking what the hell's his name? The butler.
I'm totally fine with him being Alfred.
Dude, I don't like him being Alfred.
Have you read Batman Year One?
No, I haven't. I don't read comics.
Okay, all right. So this is a comic which is basically supposed to be like Batman as close to the real world as like the comics are reasonably going to get it. And like basically like Alfred does a major part of Batman's training, and I think that's what they're angling for here in terms of like
So it's a very different direction of Alfred than
it's like Alfred is like an ex-SAS soldier, which is basically like the British Navy SEALs. So he's like an ex like SAS guy.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I will say, there was something about, it was a weird dynamic where I fucking hated Alfred in the Nolan trilogy, but he was sort of kind of meant to be hated because he was this like...
Because you know he's
moral...
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was this like, fuck off. We're having a fun movie here. Stop pointing out the right thing. Fuck off with that. Which is like a brilliant thing for Christopher Nolan, I think that when that's done right in a film where you find yourself rooting against and wanting the person who you know on some level is right to fuck off, like that's a fun thing when you do that right. But what is it? Something Caine? Is that
Michael Caine?
Is that Michael Caine?
Yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
The combination of him and Morgan Freeman,
it's a legendary.
There's
combo.
something about it where when the two of those people come together. It's like the Now You See Me movies. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
How much those movies are fucking incredible. I think that they're like insane.
Yeah.
Particularly the first one. Second one was a letdown only in comparison to the first one on its own. It's a good movie.
We'll go on with that in a sec. There's this debate in the comics community as who is Batman really? Is he with the mask on? Is he Bruce Wayne with the mask off, or is he somewhere in between? Having watched the Dark Knight trilogy, what do you think the real Bruce Wayne is? Because I think there's a clear answer, but I'll let you go first.
The real Bruce Wayne?
Or the real version of that character.
The real version of that character, is this going to sound too meta and cheesy? I think it has absolutely zero to do with Bruce Wayne.
Because, okay, so here's my thought, is that Batman is clearly an act, and then when you watch him playing Bruce Wayne, that's clearly an act. Like when he's out with, like, the fucking hot chicks, whatever. It's when he's with Alfred in, like, the Batcave, that's the real guy. Because when he's Batman, he's talking like this.
Yeah.
And, like, it's completely ridiculous.
But even more ridiculous is the showing up with two models.
And like, buying the hotel and, like...
Yeah.
Because... And when
but he's doing that, right? Isn't the reason we can say in our heads like, "Oh, this is fine," is because he's doing it to try and best ensure that no one would ever connect him to Batman.
But even watching Bale's performance, like he bases it so heavily on Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, like Bruce Wayne just as that millionaire playboy type. It's like kind of brilliant, but like. That, like, it's very clearly an act. And I think what they're angling for with the Pattinson Batman is, like, no, with the cowl on, like, this is who he actually is. Like, he is a guy who just wants to beat the fuck out of criminals and, like, can barely keep it together.
Yeah.
So it's two very interesting, very different.
But he has to deal with that. It's really hard. So the two of us come at it from a unique perspective where we're both much more sympathetic to left-wing politics, let's say, than right-wing politics. And so we're both much more, compared to the average American, when judging criminals, the two of us, I think, are much more prone than most to come at it from a perspective of like, well, let's take a step back and think about what were the relevant circumstances that led to this individual committing an act. Is it really that this person's like inherently violent or bad, or is this a result of a systemic problem? And that is where it's hard to get, because there's something inherent about Batman just beating up on poor criminals that is incredibly fucked up.
Yes.
That on its own, like, has a tendency to just piss people like you and me the fuck off.
Yeah.
And get us really mad and be like, this is the furthest thing from a hero. So then how do you balance that?
Well, here's the thing.
And
right?
get into, and then, so what's fascinating to me about that trilogy, as I rewatch it time and time again, is trying to figure out how self-aware Bruce is about that very dynamic.
So in kind of the modern incarnation of the comics, right, is that Bruce Wayne is very aware of like the problems that like poverty causes, and is like very aggressive and kind of like donating and like doing what he can to like alleviate these problems.
Further proof that rich people donating their money won't solve anything.
Won't solve anything.
Hashtag free Hassan. Hashtag Hassan, please be my friend.
Hashtag Hassan, you have some really bad takes on Ukraine, but we'll get that into that.
Nah, Hassan killed it on Ukraine.
No,
bro.
dude, he absolutely completely screwed the pooch on that one.
Yeah, but so did the majority of the left.
Yeah, so did the majority of the left. I mean, that's true. But
We were all like, this isn't a big deal.
I thought it was a big deal. I thought it was going to
Yeah, because you're a fucking loser-ass lib-cuck centrist.
I do lean toward kind of the libcuck side of things. I am decidedly left-wing, but I am a libcuck. I will fully admit that on a lot of political issues. It's the studying econ. But anyway, the point of Bruce Wayne as a character is that he, or at least the modern versions of him, is that he will like donate money to, you know, these causes that help kind of like remove, that help take the bottom out from like criminality. But like at the same time, like you and I both know that like if we were confronted with like a pedophile or like someone who is selling like crack to kids face to face, like we would beat the fuck out of them, right?
This is assuming I have the requisite skills where I have no doubt in my mind that I could beat the fuck out of this person.
Yeah, assume you have a bat suit and fucking a decade of training.
See, now it would depend. I actually do think I'm a unique. Fuck me. I fucking hate calling myself anything special. I think I tend to lean way too far towards the side of forgiveness with people.
I would not. I
think you would be much more likely to beat the fuck out of people. I really. It depends, and this is where there's a level of hypocrisy from people coming on my end. It would depend how much I saw beforehand, right? Like, have I seen this person commit? Have I seen this person physically? Have I seen a kid who's been sold whatever drug at whatever young age or been manipulated? Like, have I seen that? There's so many factors.
Yeah.
But I think I would be more likely than I want to be about just beating the shit out of someone like that.
Yeah.
For sure.
I am fully willing to admit that, like, if I knew someone had done illicit things, or, like, especially to children, like, I genuinely would try my best to reduce them to a pulp.
But we need to make a very clear distinction that there is and I'm not saying you disagree with this, but there's a lot of people, there's the fucking Morning Joes of the world of people who can't make this distinction. We need to recognize differences in motivations for crimes.
I completely agree, but I'm not saying that's a good thing, by the way. Like, my impulse to, like, you know, if faced with someone, like, to just, like, beat the fuck out of them, like, I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that really solves any problem.
No, it doesn't solve anything.
No.
It certainly doesn't stop future people from committing certain crimes.
Not at all. It's just something
the more
that,
harsh
like,
we are in punishing people who've been caught for a certain crime, this notion that it'll stop people in the future from committing the same crime, that is lunacy.
No, I completely
and
agree.
so there's a retributive
Justice?
yeah, I can't say that
Retributive
word.
justice. Yeah, something
that
like that.
that like is like a fun, interesting conversation, and it's an easy way to own the libs, because they'll be like, any person who ever does anything, they'll be, oh, throw him in fucking jail, and I'll be like, okay, like you can easily dunk on people who are like the kind of like lib centrist who's all like, they got the sign in their front yard. They're like, water is a human right, and the climate change is bad, and because I like good things.
Whereas like people like
and then they're like,
yeah.
anyone who's committed a crime, throw them in jail for fucking life. They're endangering
Yeah.
my kids.
But I think people like me and maybe you recognize that like there is an inherent hypocrisy there, but at the same time, it's like if I like in the abstract, it's like pedophilia is a complex problem and like people have complex attractions, but it is a problem. But at the same time, if you put me face to face with like someone who's a pedophile, like I can't guarantee that I wouldn't beat the fuck out of them.
Certainly, like had a pedophile gone after my younger sibling or
And
something, like I would have beat the shit out of that person. But that's much more of a that gets into a whole nother discussion, which is an interesting one ethically, but one that can be very, I think, relatively easily explained, which is just that people will do immoral things if they view it as protecting the ones they care for. And that's an incredibly important part of human nature.
Yeah.
And mothers will, think about the things that mothers will do to protect their children. Like they will, on the one hand, they will kill people. On the other hand, they will sacrifice their own life without thinking about it.
Yeah.
If it means saving, so that just opens up a whole nother door of possibilities that just requires so much goddamn context. But on the other hand, there's an inherent difference. One thing about pedophilia specifically that I find fascinating, and that's a sentence, is just that I'm not so sure. Because you'll hear this from like right-wing lunatics all the time, right? Like, if we allow gay people to get married because we say they're just like born with it or whatever, then what's next? We're going to allow pedophilia to be legal, right? Because pedophiles are just born with it. And there's a part of me that wants to be like, I actually think that that's a more likely explanation than not. I think that there's something going on genetically. Now,
the question is, how do we protect the kids?
Yes,
right?
it's sort of an unlucky, if we're going to use that phrase, thing that one person was born with whatever genetics and environmental circumstances that came together to make this person be attracted to people who identify as the same gender as them. And then you can have two consenting adults come together to do whatever the fuck they want.
And that doesn't.
And that's great.
Important.
But, and this is where, like, if a Democrat ever said this, they would get fucking eviscerated.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's probably actually the most truthful take, even if it's not the one that'll play well politically. Like, I think the same is probably true for pedophiles. I can't imagine a real explanation for pedophilia that it's purely environmental and has nothing to do with these people just got so goddamn fucking unlucky with the genetics they were born to, where something's off in their head.
Like,
and
the
maybe
wires
other
are just
other factors came together to make this worse or whatever. But that doesn't mean that we can. Of course, that doesn't mean that we should say pedophiles should just be allowed to be pedophiles.
No.
Like, consent is we can say without doubt that young 19-year-old guys have a tendency to be fucking horn dogs and think with their dicks and can't think straight.
Yeah.
But of course, we still, not that we're anywhere close to getting to a good point with this, but as we grow up and mature as people, we're like, all right, consent actually is more important than what Mr. horny 19-year-old wants in any given moment.
100%.
And so why can't we just say the same thing about pedophiles? Like, it's not really a fault of their own. And almost even saying that sounds like, ooh, blasphemy, that they're attracted to this whatever 6-year-old kid. But it's consent reigns above all. And we all fully agree that a 6-year-old can't give consent.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, okay, well, and I don't want to, because I don't know. I do think it gets into my worry about people being like, nah, like, fuck pedophiles. Let's beat the shit out of them. Let's murder all of them. Let's throw them in fucking jail. is not that I'm sympathetic to people who do things without the consent of kids. Like, I think that that's about as evil of things you can do as possible. It's more just that it plays into right-wing, like, homophobic narratives of, like, oh, we can just, like, basically, like, talk people out of their, like, I don't know, their attractions.
So all of a sudden we've turned what seems to be a simple kind of question into a much more nuanced thing. That being said, if I was face to face with someone who had like done stuff with kids, like I would beat the fuck out of them. I mean, like,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't even begin to predict what I would do. I would probably be, I think more likely than not, I would be so enraged that I would probably do a similar thing.
yeah. I mean, as
But
we've
there's like
previously established, I'm pretty unhinged.
trying to like think about like, all right, what's the best thing to do just from once an act, because it's human nature, like when an act so egregious as something like pedophilia takes place, it's like, it's so fucking offensive that we just like are desperate to find something which resembles like getting rid of how bad that bad thing was. And just like, so it means doing whatever bad thing we can imagine to the person who committed that act of violence. When in reality, it's like, I think we need to be able to just say like, look, literally nothing we do after a pedophile assaults a child can undo the just like, I mean, you can't put into words like how evil of an act that is. Mm-hmm. So then it's like, then it's all about, I think that we have a moral obligation or whatever, if you will, to just like once an act like that has occurred, it's almost less about how do we make this right, because it'll never be right, as it is about just how do we learn from every time something this bad happens to just do whatever we can to try and make it happen less and less and less in the future. And I think that I think that should take much higher priority than like revenge.
I agree. Rationally, I agree. Also, I really have to